Hey everyone, good evening. Alex Tanner here, Talking Shop with Outlier Firefighters, episode number 24. I'm here with Chief Dennis Reilly. And Chief, I'm super excited to have you. You guys missed, maybe I should start recording these green room conversations, but you guys missed some fun in there. And I hope we're probably going to talk about some of that stuff anyway on the show. But Chief, thank you so much for coming on. I'm really excited to talk with you.
Well, man, it's a pleasure. I'm always humbled when people who are doing great things for the service like you are reach out to me and say, "Hey, I'd like to have you as a guest. I'd like to hear your comments and your thoughts." So it's a privilege and a very humbling experience for an old dog like me to get to spend some time and share my journey and share the things that I've seen. So thanks.
Yeah, and the amount of people that get to listen to that too and benefit from it, like we were talking in the green room, like it's invaluable. And thank you again for coming on. So let's just kick it off with you. So, what was your first exposure to the fire service?
I swear I can't really remember the moment that I said, "Hey man, I want to be a firefighter." I can I just can't remember when that happened. I'm saying I've always wanted to be a firefighter, man. And just, I grew up on Long Island, man. When I turned 16, I became a junior firefighter as soon as I could. I left Long Island when I was 17. I went in the Army. And as soon as I got to the point where I could live off post, I joined the volunteer fire department. And from that point on, other than the time that I've spent overseas doing some protection work for the State Department and being deployed to the first Gulf War, man, I've been a firefighter all my life, man. And it's all that I know, and it's given me so much and allowed me to do so many great things, provided for my family, gave us a good living. It's just, I guess it's in the genes or the DNA. And I'm the first generation firefighter. I mean, my sister ended up becoming a volunteer firefighter on Long Island long after I was in the service. So I don't know. I mean, I'm first generation, but I'm all in.
Well, I mean, you said the gene, and you don't have to be a multi-gen, right? Because like
No.
firefighters we're firefighters. Like there's just something that clicks, and it's interesting to always to hear when it clicks. But if you've always known, you've always known. So that's pretty awesome too in its own way. Chief Alan Stiles is in here. He's saying he can't wait to see you. I think. Oh yeah, June, Great Lakes Hot. So we were talking about that too.
Yeah.
So he's gonna run into you, and that'll be fun for
Cool.
sure.
I'll be there. Yep. Yeah. I'm going back. I'm going to be involved in the officer and the command track again. So I'm kind of looking forward to that. I had a good time there last year. We wrote a lot of notes. We're going to refine what we do. So last year was a good program. This year is going to be even a little bit better.
That's awesome. Yeah.
Yeah.
So back to your career. So for context, so when people hear your insight and the things that you've experienced, so they have some context of what your career path was like, what you went through between the departments and rank and all that other
Sure.
stuff.
Sure. So I got out of service. I stayed in North Carolina. I was working. I spent a couple years as a career firefighter. I went to Cherry Hill, New Jersey, as a captain. I got hired as a training officer. We had 6 independent fire districts in our city, 30 fire commissioners, 6 contracts, 6 different work schedules. It was real. It was just really a hodgepodge. So we merged all 6 districts into one fire department. So, as an example, we went from 30 fire commissioners to 5 at the stroke of midnight. And I was part of the transition team that put that together. I spent a year in training, went back out on the line as a captain. 2 years later, took the test. Excuse me. I got promoted. I was battalion chief. Spent 9.5 years as a shift commander. We had probably about 75, 80,000 people in a densely populated suburban city. The last couple of months, they moved me over to headquarters, kind of let me have an easy ride out. I ended up going to Iraq. I worked for Blackwater Security, did some high threat stuff for the State Department, came back home, and then I went back into work. I mean, when I came back home from Iraq, I was like 49, so was still young, still wanted to work. Went to Sunrise Beach, Missouri, spent almost 8 years there as the fire chief. Took a job out in California for 2 years as an op chief. Left that, went to Kansas, the city of Pittsburgh, Kansas, for 2 years as the fire chief. And then, I turned 65, man. I retired. We bought a house, and I'm living at the beach in Florida, man. And, I have my company, First Line Fire Service Training, and, that's what I'm doing right now.
And perspective doesn't even cover that. That's an understatement. I mean, what a volume of places you've been, things you've seen, different types of firefighters you've experienced, and wow.
Well, I've had the East Coast experience, very, very heavily influenced by that. I worked on the West Coast for 2 years, so I was exposed to that, got some, exposure to that. One thing about California, California is kind of a, they're their own animal, but they do large scale incidents extremely well. And if you're part of the California Fire Service, man, you're part of that. So I picked that up. And then, like I said, when I went to Sunrise Beach, Missouri, we had two, our minimum staff was 2 people and 63 square miles and one firehouse. When I left, we were 5 people and 2 firehouses. They just opened another firehouse. We transitioned from a predominantly volunteer fire department into a career service. So I had the opportunity to really kind of work with our team to steer that transition. So that was a really good experience. So yeah, I've punched a few tickets.
Yeah, you have. So I mean, we'll get off script because I'm already fascinated by this. So what were some things, let's say, and I'm trying to come up with a way to phrase it right, like on the fly here. As you've gone to the different coasts, you've gone to the different places, what are major things that you've picked up from those? So you mentioned like the large scale incidents from California.
Right.
What are some things as you've gone along the way that you've picked up from these different regions?
Well, one thing that, the biggest thing that I picked up is, firefighters are firefighters. And, when you give the people everything they need to be successful, and then you say, now it's on you, the good people will rise to the top. They'll take advantage of those things and they'll show themselves for what they are. And that was very true in New Jersey. It happened in Kansas. It happened in California. It happened in Missouri. So, one of my big takeaways is the bottom line is the boss needs to provide the people everything they need to be successful in their role, and then tell the people, now it's on you to decide what you're going to do with what we're giving you. And from department to department to department to department, that's held true. So, I fall back on that as advice to chiefs and company officers and senior men and senior women to think about putting your people in those positions, because people will rise to the occasion. And if they don't, then you can kind of figure out who they are. And, quite honestly, no matter where you go, some people slip through the cracks. And there are people in every fire department where the bosses have got to kind of pay attention to them and make sure we keep them in line with the goals of the organization. And by providing people everything they need to be successful and then putting it back on them to make that choice, you can figure out who's who. You can figure out who's in the game and who's not. You can figure out who you want batting fourth and who you want to bring the pitch hitter in for. And, my experience all across the country has borne that out to be true.
All right. Yeah. That we're all the same.
Yeah. And something else that, I've found is in every fire department I've worked in, we've had the big fire. The big fire has come to our city. So I say to everybody, if the big fire hasn't been to your city yet, get ready, it's coming. Because every one of these organizations I've just named, I've been involved in extremely significant incidents, multiple fatalities, firefighter maydays, building collapses, just, technical rescues. It's coming. So it doesn't matter if you're one station with 3 people or 100 stations with 3,000, you're still going to end up at one of these career incidents. So if you're not ready for it today, that's okay. figure out where you are and figure out how you're going to get ready because it's coming, you know? So, when I was in Missouri, I leave my house early in the morning. We've got, training scheduled at headquarters. So I have to drive by truck 12, their firehouse. So I pull in the truck 12, man, we have a cup of coffee. All right, man, let's go. So I get, now I'm in the firehouse for the time it takes me to drink a cup of coffee. By the time I left, a flash freeze had happened. Truck 12 coming down the hill, the brakes lock up, the thing turns on its side, slides down the hill into a drainage ditch, and the chauffeur is injured, trapped in the truck. Now, we've got 5 people on duty in 2 firehouses. Okay. For us in Sunrise Beach, Missouri, that was our 9/11 event. That truly was because I had already made the left-hand turn. I didn't see the accident happen, but I heard the captain get on the radio calling urgent traffic involved in an overturned accident. I've got people pinned in the fire truck. That was our 9/11 event. So, and this is small town America, right? And the other part of the story is the chauffeur had a broken wrist and some cuts and bruises. So I get there, the squad company comes in behind me, we get him out, we know he's going to be okay, we got him in the ambulance. So the captain on the squad comes to me, he says, hey, listen, boss, I know you're not paying attention to the radio, but there's a half a dozen accidents up and down Route 5. Do you want us to go back in service and start making these runs? I go, well, yeah, absolutely. I was so focused on the accident. So not only will the 9/11 event come to your city, you've got to build strength in your force that can be resilient because, Mrs. Smith, who's trapped in her car in that ditch, she doesn't really care that the fire truck's overturned. She's waiting for the fire department to show up and help her because she's having her 9/11 moment. So my travels throughout the country tell me these are some of the things that we need to focus on. We need to talk to our people. We need to make sure they're resilient. Now, of course, if the firefighter was seriously injured, it would have been different. But we got to the point right away we realized, okay, he's going to be okay, and the switch immediately flipped to say, okay, our guy's going to be okay. We got a district we got to take care of, and that attitude, that attitude was in New Jersey, it was in Missouri, it was in California, it was in Kansas. And what we have to do is we have to make sure that we're talking to our people to, develop that hardening of personnel that can focus on prosecuting the mission. We take care of our guys, but man, as soon as we know that guy's okay, man, we got to go back to work because there's other people out there that need us. And you know what? When they're in a ditch, trapped in their car, they're not going to call Parks and Recreation to come get them. Okay, the fire department's got to come get them. So we've got to be able to do that. So that was a lesson that I learned. And the incident that I just described is not the only type of incident I had like that, but I learned that's what we have to be able to do, especially in the leadership position. We got to talk to our people about this, and we got to build those skills, those abilities, and the resiliency in our people to be able to do this.
Yeah, so let's talk about that because that was one of the questions that we were going to get into was about how we train for the mental impact, of those high stress environments that happen. I can tell you from my personal perspective in my fire academy, and I'm not knocking it. I learned a lot, and there were a lot of great instructors, but their method of teaching for mental stress was basically just yelling at us. And I think that we as not an organization, as a service here, have grown since that. And there's so many other great things like what Rick George does and Gillespie and those guys. So share your take on that, share your insight on that.
Well, I think the issue, or one of the issues, is we just don't talk about this, because we put people in training who don't understand this. So I say that if you're going to put people in training, they need to do some research. They need to start reading. They need to educate themselves to understand how the human mind works, to understand how we make that transition from, the rational frontal cortex into the reptile brain. They need to understand that. We need to explain to people that, hey, we need to do, you need to do tasks, a skill thousands of times to make sure that the neural pathways become instinctive and reactive. We don't tell them that. We just, we get them out there and say, okay, we're going to don air packs for the next hour. Okay. So like 10 minutes into this, everybody's saying, man, I put this freaking thing on 15 times. I know how to do it. And for the next 50 minutes, it becomes a real big suck fest for them. We don't explain what we're really trying to do. We don't explain, we have this whole mental, you know, piece of the puzzle. I mean, we got to wire these neural pathways. We got to, we've got to, enhance the production of myelin, which wraps around the neurons, which increases the speed of the transmission from the brain to, whatever part of your body is going to perform the task. And the more you perform the task, the more that myelin, is produced, which means the faster that task is relayed, which brings it to a more reflective, instinctive, point of view. And when people understand that, they can manage stress a little bit faster. We can put them in these situations and say, hey, we're going to do it again. Hey, we're going to do it again. Hey, we're going to do it again. And they understand why we're doing it. And now they can, they can kind of, it's instinctive. So now they can get the test done real quick and then see the big picture. And I think that's just a big issue. I mean, I think that people who go into training need to read books like, The Talent Code by Coyle, Confident Mind by Zinzer, I think is his name. He's the chairman of the Human Performance Dynamics Lab at West Point. Read Rick George's book. I mean, I know Rick George. I mean, Rick George is a genius when it comes to this stuff. But these are the things that I think that we need to focus on in training to get people to really understand what we have to do to harden people. And when we're able to harden people, give them these skills, then they can start looking at the 30,000 foot, view. Then they can start seeing, okay, I don't have to really focus in on the guy. I know he's going to be okay. Now there's other things going on I got to look at. Hey, listen, as I'm running up to this house, I can take a minute and I can look up and I can look at the second story windows and see if I see a handprint. If I see a handprint on the window, there's somebody in there, man. That's where we got to focus. I mean, there's so many things that come from this, but they're all tied together. And if we don't build the skills right in the beginning, we're not going to get to that point. Like I said, people are, they're out there for an hour putting their air pack on. Boy, this is just them playing with us. So no, it's to do all these other things.
Do you think? I'm sorry. Go ahead.
And I just say that before we go into that, we need to have a classroom lecture for 45 minutes to explain to everybody what the end state is and why we're doing what we're doing, so they understand it's not just a big suck fest.
Do you think that there's a point of manufactured stress in training? Like where's the, you know what I mean? So yes, training on those basics till you can't get them wrong, right? So they are muscle memory. What would you say you can do to have a beneficial training with manufactured stress? How can you combine those two things together without it becoming, again, just people screaming at somebody?
So I think what you have to do is you have to build the skills. You have to give them a chance to build the skills, and then you start inducing time standards. Hey, listen, when you know how to do this, now you've got to be able to do this in X amount of time. Okay, and once you get to that point, let's make it a little bit faster so we can introduce things like that. And then we can start, introducing some other things, like noise on the fire ground. Like when we do live fire training, you don't have a lot of radio traffic going on. You don't have sirens going on in the background. You don't hear fans running. You don't hear saws running. You don't hear people, banging on stuff. Those are all stressors that we can introduce to bring us closer to the fire ground. But we got to make sure that the skill level has been, at least somewhat developed before we do that. We can't, it's like, and look, a lot of us learn to swim like this, but it's not the right way. You don't take the kid, throw them in the deep end of the pool and say, swim. You got to get them to the point where they can function in that environment. So I think there's always, always an opportunity to introduce stress, but we got to make sure that we do it the right way. And it's not by yelling at people. It's, now sometimes, that is appropriate. It is one tool, but a lot of people that go into training, and the old cliche is so true. If all you have in the toolbox is a hammer, then the whole world's a nail. And if that's all they know how to do, that's how they're going to induce stress, which circles back to what I say. We need to be very selective about about who we put in training. And we need to have some expectations on them. Hey, listen, here's a copy of Rick George's book. I want you to read this book. And I'm the training chief, and I got captains assigned to me. Here's a copy of Rick George's book. I want you to read this in the next 3 weeks, and then we're going to sit down and talk about this to make sure you understand the concepts that are in that book so that you can apply them on the training ground and be successful, and just not go out there with a set of mirrors, sunglasses, a whistle, and yell at people thinking that's going to be the way that, we build, tough, resilient firefighters. It really isn't.
Yeah, well, I mean, we talk about training scars. I think there's also instructing scars, because I can sit here and admit that's how I was brought up. I didn't know any different, and for a long time, that's how, when we got to points, when I taught some fire academies in the past, and like it would get to that point, and I look back now and I'm like, I wasn't really doing what I needed to do after reading some of those books and realizing, like, but that's how I was taught, so I didn't know any better. And I think a lot of people share that, where they just weren't taught any differently.
Well, when we start, talking about reading these books, and you start talking about these concepts, and we start to introduce these type of things, then we can move training in the direction that it should be.
Yeah.
I did something. It's a parallel. It's not, a 100% fit. But I talked about this, on my Facebook page today about, entanglement props and some of the things that we do with entanglement props. Most times when we use entanglement props, we just put people in the prop, and then we say, okay, figure it out, get through this. Well, we don't make them call Mayday.
Yeah.
So think about that. If you're a new firefighter with a limited amount of experience, that's been your exposure to training. So you get into a real world entanglement situation your first month on the job. If you haven't been calling a Mayday during the training, the lizard brain's going to kick in, and you may not call the Mayday when you're actually trying to figure this thing out. And the other thing that I say about, using entanglement props is, and these are not my, this is not my, original idea. This is, talking to guys like Robert Ramirez and reading and research, whatever. When we use these entanglement props, think about this. We teach people, get over on your back, swim through, okay? All right, that's fine. But what's the situation? Okay, if they're coming from safety, what's behind them is safe. Why are we teaching them to roll over on your back and continue in the hazard? If they're coming from safe, as soon as they get entangled, they stop, call a Mayday, try to relieve the hazard, and retreat. But if you take this new firefighter and this, and you use these entanglement props like so many people do, and this first month into the job, he gets tied up into something, or she gets tied up into something, there's a chance that they may not call a Mayday, and it's a Mayday situation, absolutely, beyond a doubt. They get separated from their crew, they roll over on their back, and they try to push forward, where behind them is safe. Once again, we don't really think about this, and we don't take the time, going back to what I said about we need to explain to the recruits why they're going to do a task 200 times. We need to explain to recruits the whole methodology behind these entanglement props. My opinion, the only time you should turn on your back and try to swim through the entanglement is if you're on the way out and it happens between you and the exit. other than that, man, you need to, you need to get out of that thing, retreat, call a mayday. And I talked about this today. My wife heard it, and she goes, "You never told me about this. I got tangled up in wires one night in a high rise. I got tangled up in the hallway. Now it wasn't real bad. I was able to get out of it real quick. But I'm telling you what, man, when I got out of that, I'm calling a timeout. I'm going back downstairs, and I'm going to rest. I'm going to reset because that, a couple seconds I was tangled up in that scared the shit out of me. Okay? So this whole idea where you're going to spin over on your back and you're going to push through to do what? To continue with the task that you were moving to do? No way.
Yeah.
No way, man. Once you get in those wires, man, you got to get out. It's a mayday. You got to get out. You got to get your mask off. You got to get in the safe. You got to reset. I mean, that's all there's to it. But because we have people in training, well, that's the way we've always done it. Well, okay. I'm not saying that you're wrong. I won't even say that you're wrong. I will say that based on reading and research and conversations and talking to learned people, there's probably a better way to use these entanglement props. And we can probably do a better job of making tough, resilient firefighters that have got effective survival skills. But we got to make sure that we're putting the right people in training. And we got to encourage people to get out there, get out of your silo, start talking to people. I mean, look, I've got to tell you the way I made chief, okay? All the smart guys didn't show up on test day. So they looked around the room and they said, okay, give it to the tall guy. I mean, I am not a genius by no stretch of the imagination. But I'm into the job enough where I talk with people and I read and I do research. And I will say that there are things that we're doing on the training side that everybody does that's not producing what we really need to have to be effective on the fire ground. So.
Yeah, you're preaching to the choir. I think that there's so much growth for training and instructing, and for my state, it's instructor 1, instructor 2, I think 3, and training program manager or something. Like that's not enough. A state class is just not enough. You either understand how to teach people or you don't, and it's more than just those things. That's the next great push that we try to have within the fire service. I think. We always looked at everything comes in cycles, right? And something happens, and maydays are the big thing, and then something else happens, and high rise is the big thing, and maybe training's the next thing. Maybe that's something we really need to discuss. There's so much there, and for me out in the suburbs and a lot of other people like us, we don't get the volume of fires. We all know that, and everybody said that forever. But like we were saying, before, like you were saying before, you don't have a choice of when you get hit with it, and you got to be ready to go. And I think training's kind of not up to that belief.
Yeah. I mean, one of the problems, and I've wrote this on fire chiefs labs too, we've got to figure out how to make the training division an attractive assignment, not like, oh shit, I got to go there. So when we make it an attractive assignment, there's different ways to do that, but they're really local fits. When we make it an attractive assignment, then we have the higher probability of getting the good people in training who can learn how to train people and really have that end state of producing high quality, combat ready, good team member firefighters. I'll give you another one. Next time you go to a fire, look around how many people are running around without their flashlights on. My opinion is you should not come off the rig without your flashlight on. Because I'm riding on the truck and I'm the OV guy, so I run around the backside of the house. I don't have my flashlight on. I get on the backside of the house and I got to force the door, and then the smoke level lifts a little bit, and I see a leg down the hallway. Now I don't have my flashlight on. I got somebody in there, and the reason why, one of the reasons why that happens, is that when we train in low visibility, don't turn the flashlight on. Okay? If you're going to train in low visibility, figure out a way to obscure the vision, but make sure people turn their flashlights on, because now you're building the habit of always having your flashlight on. And even if you're in an outside position, you don't know if you're going to get sucked into the fight real quick. And when things happen like that, when that, that time curve really takes up, you forget to turn your flashlight on. I mean, I tell guys, hey, they're rechargeable. They got chargers on the rig. Turn your flashlight on before you get off of the rig. That way,
Yeah.
it's that simple. But these are just little things that we can look at and build the right habits in training, because we got people who are in training who are really in tune with the job. I mean, they're combat officers, they're combat firefighters. They spend time out there, they know the job from the street standpoint, and they can bring that skill, that, reference, that background into training.
Yeah. I got another interesting one for you. So, how often have you seen where entanglement drill or profile changes, with an SCBA maze or something? Have you seen the guys come up and take literally everything off their coat and out of their pockets and go crawl in?
Oh yeah.
Right? And
Yeah.
it's like, but you're bringing all that stuff with you. Like, you're not going to be presented with that situation
Yeah.
where you have absolutely nothing.
Yeah.
Like, they're just like you mentioned the flash. It's all those things compounding,
Yeah.
and that's a failure of the instructor, not the firefighter.
So if you carry a box light,
Yeah,
and I carry a box light, man, that thing can really tie you up. So, and then one of the evolutions is, how do you get away from that stuff? Anything that you sling on your body should have a seatbelt release, and if it doesn't have a seatbelt release, you should have a knife somewhere where you can cut yourself out of it. So, let people carry box lights with a seatbelt release, put them in that, in that low profile where they have to go through the wall. But as part of that drill, they got to dump their flashlight before they try to go through the wall. So they can find the release, they can dump their flashlight, put it on the other side of the wall. Because if you have any amount of size, when you're going through that wall, the flashlight may hang you up. Well, if you're running for your life and you get hung up by that flashlight, you don't realize what's going on. It's it's not it doesn't take much, especially for a firefighter who's not physically fit, to hit that 180, 190 pulse rate range. And it clearly, I mean, on combat, once again, required reading on combat by Grossman, he lays it out. When you hit 180, it's over with. You're just going to basically roll up on your side and wait to die. Well, if your pulse rate's up there pretty high because you're not physically fit, and then you get in this stress situation where you're trying to get away from the fire, you get that hormone dump into your system, your pulse rate goes up again. Now you're trying to go through this 16-inch stud space and this big box light that's hanging down here by your hip that you don't see catches you and you can't get through. Man, it's all over with. There's not a lot of people at that split second are going to be able to figure out, oh shit, it's my box light, because at that point you've left the prefrontal cortex, which is where you do deductive reasoning and you make good decisions. You've left that point. You're back in lizard brain. You're in fight or flight, and right now you're in the flight. You're trying to get away. That box light hangs you up, and it's enough to just put the whole thing off of the rails. So your point, make people train with their box lights, make sure they turn their lights on, and then walk them through this low profile maneuver, just like I said. Hey, when you come up here, make the hole, get your box light off, put it on the other side of the hole, and then navigate through the hole, and then put your light back on.
yeah, yeah,
Why
absolutely,
not?
yeah.
Why not?
If you're going to bring it in with you, you should learn how to operate with it, right? Like, it's that simple.
Absolutely.
And I think
Why
that was
not?
one thing that we talked that when Pruitt was on, we talked about that, and I think that spawned a lot of this kind of maybe
Yeah.
conversation, but it's straight up truth, right?
Well, we tell people to carry wire cutters, but do we ever have them train cutting wire? With an elevated pulse rate in a limited visibility, environment. I mean, I made this statement, not too long ago. It's a false sense of security telling people to put wire cutters in their pocket. If you're not going to give them the opportunity to train in a realistic environment to use their wire cutters, they're better off not carrying them. They're better off. Because what good are they going to do? Do we honestly and truly think that some person with a limited amount of experience in the most threatening situation they've ever been in, a life and death situation, are going to be able to reach in their pocket and figure out what to do with these wire cutters?
Yeah, yeah.
I mean, it's just no. It's not going to happen. And what I said on my social media page today is, here's the problem. And I talked to fire chiefs. This is right at fire chiefs. Hey, if you're going to have a tangle box, then you need to have 4 of them. And if you're going to do firefighter survival training with these tangle boxes, then you need to have enough staff so that when a person goes through, they can use their wire cutters. You move that prop out of the way. You put the next one in so training can continue, and then you got 2 or 3 people who are over on the side with a metric fuck ton of wires where they restring the box. So the training keeps on going. But we're giving people an opportunity to use the wire cutters. Like I said, it just drives me crazy. I mean, I've come to this conclusion that, we're telling people to carry wire cutters, but we're not prepared for it. Think about this. You join the Army, I give you a rifle, but I don't take you to the range.
Yeah.
Here's your rifle. When you run up on the bad guy, use this thing to kill him. Okay?
Yeah.
And then 8 months from now, I send you to war. Okay? It's just, I mean, it's the same thing. We're not giving the people the opportunity to perfect the skills and training, and we expect them to be able to do it in a violent encounter, because that's what I mean. These Mayday survival situations, they're all violent encounters.
Yeah.
I mean, come on. I mean, let's face it. I mean, if you get into one of these things and it doesn't go right, you're going to die. Well, isn't that a violent encounter?
Yeah.
So, yeah.
So where do you think? So I mean, obviously, changing curriculum is not an easy task by any stretch of the imagination. So working this into a regular basic firefighter, I mean, does it really just come down to personal responsibility of presenting that to your organization?
Well, I think at some point in time, fire chiefs have got to understand that as a fire chief, you are responsible of sending battle-ready firefighters to the fire ground. Okay, and I think these things that I'm pointing up, they fall back in the fire chief's lap. Okay, that's your responsibility, chief. Now, I'm not saying you have to do it, but I'm saying that you've got to figure out a way that these issues are addressed in your organization. So, you talk with your training staff. You send people with FDTN. Send people down here to the county fire tactics school. I mean, we do some really good stuff down here. Hey, the Illinois Fire Academy, Writ Under Fire, is one of the best programs in the country.
Yeah.
I mean, not just in the state, in the country. So, think about that. I mean, I just gave you, I gave you an option: Indianapolis, Illinois, Florida, right off the top of my head. And there's plenty others. So chiefs have got to take this responsibility and figure out how they're going to meet it within their organization. And there's tools out there. I mean, you send a couple people to some of these schools, and then they come back and they develop the in-service training program, and you put your people through it. And I think that part of it is, look, as long as you have, IFSTA and Bartlett and Jones, we're going to get what we get out of the fire academy. And what we have, what chiefs have to do, in my opinion, is realize the shortcomings between somebody who's got a certificate with a seal on it that says firefighter 2 and what you need to be able to do on the fire ground. And once we identify those two things, then the chiefs have got to figure out how to bridge that gap. And there's plenty of places to do that. I mean, do a deep dive into the colony and see what Chief Thompson's doing with the training season they do down there. And you know what? Reach out, do a Google search, go to his website, and for free, you can download his training program. So even if the chief doesn't want to do all this, we'll go download the freaking program. Because somebody's already done it to you. Reach out to Chief Brush in Midwest City. I mean, he's a very approachable guy. He's all over the internet. Reach out to him. They do the exact same thing in Midwest City. There's plenty of organizations that are out there addressing these issues. So the resources to bridge the gap between what comes out of Fire Academy as opposed to what needs to be done on the fire ground, the resources are there. You just got to reach out for them. Reach
Absolutely.
out for 'em. Get the resources and then empower your people. Pick a captain. Pick your best captain or your best battalion chief and give them all this information and say, hey, look, I need you to take this on as a special project, okay? I mean, I know you got a bunch of things going on. Listen, I'm going to give you 60 days. If you need any help, let me know. But I want you to look at this stuff. I want you to identify where our gaps are, okay? Where we are now compared to the stuff that I just gave you, and give me suggestions on how to bridge that gap. And then the fire chief, because I was a fire chief, man, and I know how much time I had to spend with the finance director and the HR manager and the city attorney and the city manager and the staff meetings, and I gotta go to Rotary, because they want the public to fit. I get all that, okay? There's but so many hours in the day, and as much as I kind of poke at chiefs, I poke at them because I've been there. I understand that.
Yeah.
Okay, you're not a one-man band. I mean, you can get this information and empower the people you trust in your organization. And look, everybody knows who the go-getters are. Okay, everybody knows who the heavy hitters are. And quite honestly, if you turn this over to one of the go-getters, they're going to eat it up with a spoon. Don't give it to a mutt. You're not going to get anything in return. But we know who the mutts are too. Give it to a go-getter. Say, hey, listen, man, let me know if you need anything. Get back to me. I'm going to check back with you in 2 weeks just to see where you are. And then we're going to check in every month for the next 3 months. And at the end of that third month, that's when the final report is due. And I'm just going to check in with you on a regular basis, And my experience tells me if you give this to the right people, at the 45-day mark, they're going to come running in your office. Man, I got it, man. We're ready to go, man. Let me lay it out. All right, let me clear my calendar. Give me the info, chief. Give me the info, cap. And that's how you can do it.
Yeah.
Okay? It can be done. And like I said, I made chief because the smart guys weren't there. They gave it to the tall guy. I mean, if I can figure this out, there's a hell of a lot of fire chiefs out there who are a lot smarter than I am. They can figure it out. It's just a matter of doing it.
Yeah. Saying yes to the right person. You talked about the colony and that baseball schedule. My department we're working through. We just did that for our first year. We were working through it because there's some things that get added, so it was hard to schedule all the way out. But we noticed when we first started it and we were really sticking to it, our training numbers went up, our engagement in training went up. Some things happened along the way, and we're trying to refocus that. But that kind of stuff really works, and all it took was for a chief to say yes. Really, at the end of the day, that's all it took was a chief to go run with it.
Yeah. I mean, excuse me. As much as I knock on chiefs have got a lot of power. Chiefs have got a lot of influence, and chiefs have got a lot of ability to do good stuff. You just got to get it done, man.
Yeah.
Just got to get it done. Pick the right person and things happen.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
I'm totally shamelessly plugging here, too, by the way. You brought up Rid Under Fire, and I am an Illinois guy, and I'm actually going to it for my first time in 2 or 3 weeks.
Yeah.
And I was going to probably throw a bonus episode when I got home and just knowledge dump everything that I learned over that. So a little shameless plug for a bonus episode that I'm going to try to do later. But we have a bunch of people that have went through it and just say it's unreal. And again, a lot of my audience is Illinois because that's where I'm from, and I would reach out to the people that are from Illinois. You have an opportunity. I mean, Chief Reilly here, he's in Florida and he's telling you about something that's in our backyard. So get on the train and go try it. Go do it. I shouldn't say try it.
Highly recommend that program. Absolutely. And I don't know if they still do it or not, but they were playing around with a program, and I forget the name of it, but it was when Royal Mortensen was the director, and it was all about decision making. And
Yes, yes. Leadership decision make. What is
yeah,
it? So I'm supposed to go to that in the beginning of next year, and they have
they
I
have a
had
firefighter track.
yeah.
They have a firefighter track, a company
Hmm.
officer track, and a chief officer track. And I have not been to the programs, but I know Royal Mortensen. I know the people who develop those programs. And once again, that's in your own backyard. Now, look, there's no you. The excuse playbook has got 1,000 pages in it,
Yeah.
but there's not a single excuse in there that holds any water. So in Illinois, you've got a firefighter, an officer, and a chief officer decision making program that is as good as any program you're going to find in the country. And your state is running as good of a RIT program as any program out there. So in your own backyard, you got these resources.
Yeah.
So I say to fire departments, if you're struggling with these issues, like why? Why are you struggling with them? Because the resources are out there.
Yeah. Yeah, and if you're setting me up for shameless plugs here again, but
Yeah.
I had Sammy Vega on, and I don't remember the episode number. He's from Calumet City, and he's involved in that program, and we talked about it a little bit on that episode. And all I've ever heard is great things about leadership. I'm gonna butcher it. It's LDDM. I can't remember what
Yes. Yes.
leadership decision. I can't remember what the two D's are. But either way, it's really cool. So those things
Yeah.
exist, and they're and
Yeah.
like you said, it's your fault basically if you're not going to them, right?
They're out there. I mean, they're out there. And for Chiefs, like I said, I get the demands on the Chief schedule. I mean, I get that. I totally get that. I've been there. There's the resources. Just send people. Just send people. I mean, for an in-state, it's a couple $100, man. Cover a shift, and travel, in a hotel room, and at a Holiday Inn or something. It's
Yeah,
like, come on, man. I mean, come on. Fire departments are spending more. There are fire departments that spend more money on toilet paper than they do on training. Like, tell guys, hey, listen, and of course, some guys will grumble, but hey, listen, we're not going to buy toilet paper anymore. We're going to take that $60,000 and we're going to invest it in your training. Bring your own toilet paper from home. Guys will bitch and complain and whatever, and 30 days down the road, they won't think twice
yeah,
about it. You'll be sending people out every month for quality training. And I'm not saying don't buy toilet
sure,
paper. I'm
yeah,
just saying, Chiefs, start thinking about things like this and how do we get these things done? Can we find enough money in the budget to send two people? Just send two people. If you send the right two people, it's like the Army does with Ranger School. Not everybody who goes to Ranger School goes to the Ranger Regiment. A lot of people that go to Ranger School go back to their units and be force multipliers. Take everything from Ranger School and pass that on so that those leadership traits and characteristics that they teach trickle down through the force without having to send everybody to Ranger School.
yeah,
Service figured out how to do that. It's the same thing. Send one guy. Send one guy a year for 3 years. By the time it's done, then you got one guy. Put one guy on each platoon. You got 3 platoons. We got a force multiplier on each platoon.
yeah. My captain is in the chat, and he said leadership development decision making.
Yes.
So thanks, Ben, for the assist on that one because
Yeah.
I couldn't remember the other D.
Yep.
And I guess I should kind of catch up on
It's a
some
great
of these
program.
guys. Corley was in here checking us out too. I don't know if he's still in here, so thanks for jumping
Oh,
in.
cool.
So yeah, that's pretty cool too. So, but anyway, man, talking about training, I could talk about training for hours, which I think is pretty much like the premise of most of this show. It seems like, but you're picking my brain for sure. So let's talk about another kind of training thing, but it's more of a development thing. So, bettering yourself in the absence of some senior firefighters pulling you aside and giving you that mentorship. So what can younger firefighters do who maybe don't have that senior man, if you will, but still need the development?
So I think that, the younger firefighters nowadays are in a very advantageous position because we have social media, we have YouTube, we've got a lot of resources out there. Now, hit the brakes real quick because whatever you check out in social media, you got to vet it. You got to make sure there's some value to it. But there's a whole bunch of good stuff out there that's available to you. There's a whole bunch of good podcasts out there that aren't fire stuff. They're life lessons. They're decision making. There's listen to some stuff that Jocko does. I mean, Jocko does some really phenomenal stuff about being able to operate in a stressful environment. So kind of open the door a little bit. Read. It drives me crazy. Well, I don't like to read. Well, okay, great. I don't like to pay taxes either. But if I don't pay taxes, I go to jail. If you're a professional, maybe you need to get off the I don't like to read kick and read a little bit. Hey, here's something for every person out there. Okay, look, I get it. Money is money. Okay. And if you're really, really struggling, man, I feel for you, brother. Because when we first got married, man, we struggled too. But an individual membership at FDTN is $50 a year. So for $50 a year every month, you get their magazine, which is quick, easy to read articles written by vetted professionals. So if you don't have that senior person who's mentoring you, spend $50, get a membership to FDTN, and read the magazine. Because there you're going to have multiple senior people who are mentoring you, because that magazine comes out every month with some great stuff. And I mean, I get it. I mean, I'm still reading the thing, man. It comes, I'll sit down and probably within 90 minutes, 2 hours, I've read the whole thing. I make some marks in it. So if you're working a 48-hour shift, you can't find 2 hours to read. At some point, look, I understand the need and the value in having a mentor and having somebody reach down to help you. But at some point, it is your career. At some point, you have to take responsibility for yourself. So if you don't have that person that's reaching down to you, FDTN, some YouTube stuff, some Facebook stuff, some Fools chapters. I mean, go to a Fools meeting. I mean, the chapters are popping up all over the place. You all got a chapter. You all got a new chapter up by you. Go to a meeting and just meet some people. Your mentor does not have to be the senior person in your company. Your mentor can be somebody you meet at the Fools chapter. You strike up a friendship. Now all of a sudden, you're reaching out to them when you got a question. They're mentoring you. They're guiding you. They're sharing their stories, their mistakes. So there's 4 things that a new person can do right away. And if you're not getting it, and the other thing too is, sometimes, it's a difficult, I get it, man. It's difficult when you're the new person, but sometimes maybe you just need to go into the captain and say, hey, captain, I'm really struggling with throwing the 24-foot. I'm struggling with it. I do a lousy job. I don't think I do it well. It intimidates me. Can somebody on the company help me? And put it back on the officer. And quite honestly, that's the officer's job. They should jump up and say, yeah, absolutely, man, come on out. We'll get right on that. So where if you're lacking the people approaching you, then maybe you need to approach somebody. Maybe it's the officer, maybe it's the senior person. Here's the other thing too. And I really get into it with some people that work for me, about this. Look, we got to build good relationships in the firehouse, okay? Because it's a team, and the team is built on good relationships. So if you're that new guy, you need to kind of go out of your way to try to fit in. Now, if you're the senior people, and I say this as the boss, if you're senior people, they're not your play toy, okay? If you got time to flower them, you got time to train them, okay? So I want these relationships built on both sides. But if we set that as the left and right limits, when those new people start, taking a little initiative and they start doing stuff and they start asking the senior person for advice, the senior person's more likely to give them advice because of the relationships the new people have invested in with the senior folks. The senior folks just got to realize that, hey, this is not, look, man, when I first came on, we were still riding on tailboards. I had hip boots. We had one air pack in a suitcase in the compartment. Okay. It's not that anymore. Look, as the boss, I'm telling everybody, listen, this is 2023 going into 2024. Okay. So we got to understand that everybody, people have got a right to be in the workplace. We set expectations. They meet the expectation. They have a right to be here. But we got to start treating people well across the board, left, right, up, and down. So I think when we do all those things, we create that environment where young firefighters can find mentors. And the other thing is, you got all these podcasts and whatever. Man, when this podcast is over, I'm going to put my contact information out there. I mean, somebody's got a question, reach out to me. Yeah. I mean, I'll get back to you as soon as I can. But social media, the internet, all these other, platforms make it easier for us to connect with other people who can actually kind of help us and guide us. So I just threw 6 things out there real quick. So pick one. And if it doesn't work, try another one.
Yeah. It's out there. You can't. You're just negligent at this. And I shouldn't say it like that. If you're really junior and you haven't experienced, maybe this is your first exposure to that knowledge that this exists. Yeah. So take it and use it.
Yeah, and we all have to put ourselves in the other set of shoes. Look, if you're a 22-year-old, man or woman, your work experiences, you worked at Walmart for a year and a half, you still live at home. I mean, they've got a real compact life experience. So it's going to be hard for them to walk into this work environment. You take a person like that and stick them in a firehouse where the least senior person's got 14 years on the job. Man, we got to feel for that young person, because that's a hard place to walk into. But when we have all these type of conversations, we realize that it's like, all right, well, them young guys. I got into it with a guy that worked for me. Oh, them young guys this, them young guys that. Well, you were a young guy one time. Yeah, I know. It kind of sucked back then. I said, well, it sucks now, too. Well, I had to go through it. Well, it's not like that anymore. Stop doing that. We had a guy in one of the organizations I worked for. Captain says, hey, man, we got to get the grass cut. Go cut the grass. The guy said, man, I don't know how. So everybody's looking at him like, what do you mean you don't know how? He said, I don't know how to cut the grass, man. I never started a lawnmower or anything. So right away, the old guy goes, what, you an imbecile? Well, no. He's a young guy. He lives at home. And guess what? His dad is meticulous about the lawn. He wouldn't let the guy cut the grass. He wouldn't let the guy touch the lawnmower. The dad was meticulous about this. So what do? They go out there and they teach the guy how to cut the grass. And then he goes home and he starts talking to his dad about hey, I cut the grass today at the firehouse. So then his dad starts giving him, tips. 6 months down the road, the firehouse looks like a golf course, and the young guy is the guy who's doing it. Okay, but the first reaction when he said, "Man, I don't know how to do that," no, he's an idiot. No, he's not an idiot. No, and like I said, 6 months down the road, I had the best looking firehouse in the place.
That's awesome.
Yeah. Yeah, I really kind of get on this, but man, I'm gonna get on this. I'm gonna ride this one until it collapses. I had people, these young guys, nobody knows how to work a chainsaw nowadays. Well, hey, bro, what kid growing up in Brooklyn, living on the 14th floor of a city housing projects, got a chainsaw in your closet? Right?
Yeah, right.
But guess what? If you work for the New York City Fire Department, at some point in time, you learn how to run a chainsaw, and they use them. Okay? You can grow up in New York City and never have a driver's license. Think about that.
Yeah.
You ride the subways. So they got people who are driving fire engines. They got people who are driving aerial apparatus in New York City that never drove a car before they came on the fire department. But now they're driving tower ladders in Manhattan. And the reason why they're doing it is because they train them. They just say, oh, okay, different people come to the service with a different set of life experiences. So what we have to do is we have to take them in, figure out what experiences they've had that's going to enhance our ability to prosecute the mission, and figure out what experiences they're lacking and work on shoring those experiences up so that they are not a weakness to the team. And I mean, I just gave you 3 examples,
Yeah.
and they're real world. And like these old crusty guys who are walking around with the bedroom slippers on, bitching about the young generation. Well, riddle me that bat, man. Tell me about the chainsaw in the New York City Fire Department. Tell me about the guy who doesn't have the driver's license, who's now driving a tower ladder in a city where you probably couldn't drive 1 block without wrecking a frickin' thing.
Yeah.
It's like, come on, man. It's like, come on now. Just take your foot off the gas and let's look at this thing. And really, as a boss, I tell people, let's look at this thing for what it is. These are the cards that we've been dealt. How do we develop this hand to be the best possible hand going to Mrs. Smith's fire? That's what we got to do. And that's all there is to it. And you know what? Sometimes when you start turning these rocks over and you spend a little bit of time working and talking with people and coaching them, you get a front lawn at the firehouse that looks like a golf course. From a guy 6 months, 6 months ago, the guy didn't even know how to start a lawnmower.
Yeah, what an awesome analogy and parallel to all of that.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So
Yeah,
so keeping on kind of some of that, we were one of the things we were talking about, or we were going to talk about, was tactical excellence, right? So getting to that point, training people to that point, and having the work ethic to do that, right? So often in the things that you were talking about, where the guy doesn't know how to do this, but he's got the work ethic to learn. And let's shift gears to that and talk about that, because I'd really love to hear your thoughts on that.
Sure. So this is a program that I deliver a lot. It's one of the favorite it's one of my favorite programs. And what I say is there's so many elements with tactical excellence. But when I was a subordinate officer before I became a fire chief, when I was a company officer, when I was a battalion chief, when I was a shift commander, the very first thing that I realized is values are everything. So if we set the values right, everything else is going to flow from that. If we have the values right, the culture is going to build in a positive direction. So as a fire chief, I wrote core value statements, and I think they're very important for the chief to do that. But when you put them up on the wall, guys look at them, just another piece of paper from headquarters. So when I was a captain, when I was a battalion chief, if you came to my command, I sat down with you and I said, hey, listen, I want you to understand the 4 things that we value here in this firehouse, on this platoon. Number 1 is trust, okay? I've got to trust you, and you got to trust me, because we're going to do some dicey stuff, and if either one of us can't trust the other one, we're going to fail, okay? So trust. We got to be able to trust each other. Tactical excellence. Tactical excellence is everything. So you got to know how to do your job. You got to be able to do your job in whatever condition, whatever environment we get sent to. So if there are gaps in your skill set, you need to let us know so we can help you fix that. So trust, tactical excellence. Number 3, team before self. This is a team environment. If you're here for yourself, go to work for the cops, because it doesn't work here, okay? And the last thing that this platoon, this company values is hard work, okay? So if people know that's what I value, and that's part of my expectations. They know that from day one. Trust, tactical excellence, team before self, hard work. Once I communicate that, then we just start moving down the path. Okay? And then everything else flows. But I think that if you don't set this as the benchmark, you don't have an anchor point. If you just, we're going to do this for a month, and then we're going to do this for a month, and we're going to do that. There's no anchor You're just kind of all over the place like a pinball. So that's the first element of tactical excellence. The next thing I say is, here is our default position on this platoon. Every day you walk through the door, we're going to go to a fire. Because we work in suburban America. We go 4 or 5 months and we don't go to a fire. And then all of a sudden, 5 months in a day, we're at a fire. So every day in the firehouse, we're going to go to a fire. If we don't, that's the way it goes. But our mindset from the minute we walk through the door is we're going to go to a fire. We're always going to default to aggressive actions. It doesn't matter what strategy. If we're offensive, defensive, transition, whatever we do on the fire ground, we're going to attack aggressively. So if we're going defensive, it's not, well, we'll save it at the corners. No, I got 50% of the building involved. We're going to save that other 50. It may be a defensive operation with ladder pipes and master streams, but we're going to save that other part of the building. Okay. Third thing is, if it's a building, it's occupied. That's simple. Now, we're looking for searchable space. We don't worry about survivable space. We don't worry about any of that. We're looking for searchable space because every building we go to is occupied. And not only is it occupied, we're going to find somebody in there. So, and we have a plan on what we're going to do when we find them. It's not a jack in a box mode. Oh, wow, we found somebody. No, we have a plan. And in our organization, like our engine company is new, 3-person engine company. Nozzle person pushing down the hallway, they come across a victim. They sound off victim, victim, victim. They push 4 foot past the victim. If you have the nozzle in your hand, you never put the nozzle down. The control person, which is the officer, he gets on the radio, makes a transmission. We got a victim. They start to remove the victim, and they get on the radio to say, we're coming out front door on the A side. Because we worked in suburban America, we didn't always have an EMS unit on our fire grounds. So all the chauffeurs on the fire ground, as soon as they heard victim coming out A side front door, they're grabbing all the EMS gear and they're looking. If there's not an EMS unit on the fire ground, the chauffeur's going to the front door. So we're making a positive transfer of patient from the search to the chauffeurs until we get an EMS unit there. So that's what I mean by it's occupied, we're going to find a victim, and we have a plan on what to do when we find. And the fourth thing is, if we find one, there's more in there. So this is suburban America. We drag one out, but the primary search isn't complete. So does that mean that the people who drug the first victim out may have to go back in there? Yeah. Yeah. Because this is suburban America. When I was a chief in Pittsburgh, Kansas, our minimum staffing in 3 firehouses, 13 square miles, 21,000 people were 8 people. Minimum staffing. In the 2 years I was in Pittsburgh, we had 4 burn center missions. So we go to fires. And if you're minimum staffing with 8 people and you got 1 or 2 people out there running machines, and then you got somebody on the roof making a hole, you find a victim, and if there's another one in there, you may just have to be able to suck it up and get back in there, do a quick bottle change, get back in there. And another reason why I say that is if you look at the study, if you look at firefighter rescue surveys that Chief Brush is doing, finding victims at the 16 to 20 minute mark from the time the fire department arrives until the victim is removed from the structure, 16 to 20 minutes, those people have a 49% chance to survive. That's a 50% chance.
Yeah.
So that tells me in suburban America, if we don't have enough people, you got to rebottle and you got to get back in there and finish the search, because even if you locate them in the 18 minutes, they still got a 50% chance to survive in that incident. So that's our default position. So I talk about the values and I talk about the default, our default posture. Those are the things that we're going to do. And when we start talking about that, when the boss and all the other subordinate bosses are reading off of that same page, that's where we start moving to tactical excellence. And then everything else flows from that, Everything else flows from that. But I think you got to make those 2 statements very clear to everybody in the command. This is what we're going to do. And these statements actually become my expectations. So if I brief you on this and I give it to you, here's a piece of paper. This is what we value, and this is our default posture. If I give that to you on a piece of paper, and I say, hey man, you have any questions? Because now is the time to answer your questions, man. I'll answer any question you have. But if you say, oh, I got it, boss, well, man, those are your expectations. That's what you're going to be held accountable to. That's how we manage this platoon. This is how we manage this firehouse and boom. I think that sets us up for tactical excellence. And then, like I said, I got a 2-hour program I do on this
Yeah, yeah.
where we really kind of dig down on some of this stuff. But I think that's what you have to do. Now, what I just said, that's my viewpoint. Yeah. If anybody wants to use that, you're more than welcome to it. Feel free. I mean, I'll send it to you. But the other thing, too, that I tell bosses is don't underestimate the intelligence of firefighters. And if you're just copying and pasting something that Dennis Reilly says, when you say that, somebody's going to say, yeah, I wonder where I got that one from. Because they're going to know it's not your fault, So you've got to if you agree with what I say, you've got to put it in a way that when you say it, people say, okay, yeah, it resonates with them. To kind of illustrate that point, if you just took those things that I said, wrote them on a piece of paper, and if you went back to Cherry Hill, New Jersey, and talked to some guys who were on that job that worked with me, and you showed them that paper and you said, man, who said that? I bet you some of them would say it was me. Because they just know, because, and I say that to bosses, never underestimate the intelligence of firefighters, especially the ones you don't like, because they're smart. So if you just try to do this with all smoke and mirrors and cut and paste somebody else's stuff, and they're going to see right through it. And what you're telling them, what you're really saying to them, excuse me, is that they're not worth the time and effort of an original thought. You're just going to go grab something that you think sounds cool and throw it out there like it's your own.
Yeah.
And some people are going to say, well, okay, well, that's, boy, the boss spent all 30 seconds coming up with this one.
Yeah.
What's he going to come up with next? And you're really kind of, you're really hurting your credibility. And if we go back to the trust thing, it's like, well, he doesn't come up with an original thought. How the hell am I going to trust him? So, but that's tactical excellence in a nutshell. But I think there's a lot of things that, we walk out from that. I talk about training. I don't know. Are you familiar with the picture where the woman is hanging out the window and she's getting ready to drop her kid to a firefighter on a ladder?
Yes.
Well, I use that, and when we talk about tactical excellence, and I talk about that picture for a good 5 minutes. And sometimes I get emotional. But, I'm an emotional guy when it comes to this job. When you look at that picture, he's standing at the top of a ladder, of an extension ladder. He's over the tip of the ladder. He's hanging on to the side of the building to maintain his balance. He's got an air pack on, so center of gravity is way off. He's overextending himself. And that woman looks out the window and, does she say, hey, bro, when's the last time you did any training? Hey, bro, when's the last time you were in the gym? Hey, man, how prepared are you? She looks out there and she sees a firefighter and she's getting ready to drop her kid. And she's got to be on a third story, on a third story window. So if we want to talk about tactical excellence, what I say is put that picture up and ask all your members, are you prepared right now, today, to do that? And if you're not, okay, where is the gap? Because if we, two things about that. That is tactical excellence, being able to do that. And tactical excellence is what your community expects you to deliver. And they're pumping how many millions of dollars in your organization, and you're going to show up with a half-ass effort? You're going to look up and say, man, I don't want to do that shit. No way. No way. So, we talk about what we value. We talk about our default postures. I put the picture up. That's tactical excellence. And I look at my subordinate officers, because I've been a chief for so long, I just look at everything through the chief's lens. I look at all my subordinate officers, and I say, every member on your company needs to be able to do that. And if they can't, if you think there's a gap, then you need to go fix that because you're the boss of that company. But that's what I expect everybody in the organization to do. Now, I would do it. It may take me a little bit longer because I'm kind of rickety, man. I'm old and I'm stiff, and I'm not as quick as I used to be. But if I pulled up and I saw that going on, I would run up that ladder. I mean, I ran up the 35-foot extension ladder a couple of years ago, and I pulled kids out of an apartment fire. You know, that's what we're expected to do. So if we talk about tactical excellence, and I think sometimes it's good to use the picture because we can talk about this conceptual stuff all day long, and I'm kind of a conceptual type guy. But then you throw the picture up there and you say, there it is, man, there's the mark. Can you do that?
Yeah.
And if you say, yeah, okay, let's hold up, man, let's go to the training academy. Put the ladder up and climb up that ladder, and hold on to the side of the building. And I'm gonna drop this doll for you to catch. Because everybody's gonna look at the picture. Oh yeah, yeah, I can do that. All right, well that's fine. Well, let's just go check and make sure. You know, Reagan says trust but verify. Got to make sure people can do it. So those are my thoughts on tactical excellence.
Oh,
And a lot of what we already talked about is all weaved into this. If we're going to talk about tactical excellence, if we're going to talk about operational, then we got to have effective training.
yeah.
Okay, and if we're going to have effective training, then we've got to have a good relationship amongst the members, especially the people who we're going to empower to train our people. If they have a shitty relationship with their company, people are going to tune them out. The men and women, they're going to sit there, they're going to fold their arms, close, yeah, 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 yeah. And they're just going to look at the clock and wait for the drill to be over with. So we got to have those good relationships.
Yeah.
So that means that we got to treat each other well. That's another thing I talk about. I got a slide in that presentation that John, from Fit to Fight Fire gave me. He went in, he had his stuff in the dryer. He goes in, oh shit, man. He goes in, and somebody had already taken his, laundry out, folded it up real nice and neat, laid it on top of the dryer. Most firehouses you walk into, man, oh man, they just take your shit and throw it up on top of the dryer. I'm not here to be anybody's maid. Well, think about that. If we want to have those good relationships on our team, and good relationships are what allows us to work at a high level, high performance level, we treat each other right. How long does it take you to fold a couple T-shirts? Go ahead and do it. Go out of your way. There's nothing wrong with going out of your way and being nice to somebody, because you know what? Now, that person you did that for is probably going to say, man, I need to pay this back. Maybe I don't know who did it. And John said, nobody would say who did it. They just, don't worry about it. That's just the way we roll here. So now all of a sudden, you're the recipient of that. So now you go out and say, all right, well, maybe I can do something for somebody else. And we just start building those relationships. If we're going to talk about tactical excellence, if we're not treating each other well in the firehouse, it's not going to happen on the fireground. Okay?
Yeah.
And I say this in my program. If you have a dysfunctional firehouse, then you're going to take a dysfunctional company to the fireground. That's all there is to it. These people that say, hey, man, don't worry about me because I'm all in when the bell hits. Bullshit. Bullshit. You're going to do on the fireground what you do in the firehouse. The average suburban fire department, and I don't know, I'm just pulling a number out of my head based on what I think, what I've seen, what I've experienced. I say that the average suburban fire department is probably spending about 8% of their time heavily engaged in emergency operations. Now, they're going to alarm calls, they're going to, but I'm talking about serious events, probably about 8% of the time. Who thinks that the other 92% of the time isn't going to impact that 8%? So if you have a dysfunctional firehouse and that's where you are 92% of the time, you're going to be dysfunctional on the fireground. Now, I mean, come on, who's kidding who? In what universe would that 92% not have some impact on the 8?
You're spot on. Yeah.
So if we want to have tactical excellence, these are the things that we have to talk about. We got to talk about, what we value. We got to talk about our default positions, and then we got to talk about how we build good relationships here at the firehouse, because the firehouse really dictates how the fire ground goes. I talk about the kitchen table. I got rules for the kitchen table. Your seat is earned. Your seat is earned. It's the best seat in the world, but you got to earn the right to sit there. That means, that's why I say we value hard work, because you got to work hard. You earn your seat. There's no rank at the kitchen table, only respect. Okay? At the kitchen table, if I'm the boss, that's the time you got to tell me the stuff that I need to hear that I might not necessarily want to hear. And because the rules of the kitchen table, you're able to do that. You're able to help me do my job, because there are things as a boss I probably need to hear that I don't want to. I'm not, I mean, hey, bro, can you tell me all the things that I do wrong, man? I want to sit down and eat this up with a spoon. Nobody wants to do that. So those are the things. Everybody has a voice, and everybody's worth listening to. I tell people, when I talk about the colony and the Big Five and the training, I tell people, have the Big Ten, have your 10, which is you get everybody sitting at the kitchen table with a piece of paper and a pencil. You write down the 10 things your company needs to be good at. Okay. So if I'm downtown and I got a high rise, I probably, want to be good at high rise. But if I'm at engine 18, way out on the outskirts of the city, and the tallest building I got is a 2-story chicken coop, but I got to do mobile water supply, I probably need to be real good at that. And I don't have to worry too much about high rise, just like the high rise guys aren't going to worry about the 2-story chicken coop. So we can identify those things at this firehouse based on our location, our staffing, and our mission have to be good at. So everybody does this. So then we start looking at the list, and those things that show up on multiple lists are a real trigger, man. We got to include those in our training program. We want everybody to have a voice, because the new person who's only been there for a month may see something that we don't see because we've been there for so long. And we've developed, because we get into the comfort zone and we've developed some blinders, we don't see the blank in our game. But because the new person hasn't been there for 5 years, it's new to them, and it jumps right out at them. So, well, man, we need to be pretty damn good at this, bro. And they see it because they have a whole fresh perspective. So when I talk about the kitchen table, everybody has a voice, and everybody's worth listening to, because that new person that doesn't have a whole bunch of experience doesn't have any ties either. And they may pick up on something that's like, oh, holy shit. When we develop our company training schedule, it's not the captain's schedule. It's the things that we identified that we need to be good at. So he has got buy-in for our training schedule. So, I mean, if we want to be tactically excellent, here's one of the tools we can use to get there.
Yeah. You're leaving me speechless. I got to get better at these transitions, man. But you're spot on. I mean, it doesn't get much more clear than that, And I love what you said about earning at the table too, Hey,
could you imagine how good this could be if the smart guys actually showed up on test day? Hey, give it to the tall guy. Yeah, what the hell?
Oh, come on. But the whole earning the spot, I think one of the things that you sent when we were coming up with the questions was about earning your spot as a firefighter, earning the right to be called a firefighter, that means something.
Yeah.
And what would you say maybe the criteria would be where someone's earned that right to be a firefighter, or earn that spot?
Yeah. So I think one of the things that I look for in people is discipline, that quality of self-regulating behavior. So I'm looking at this guy or this woman, and they get to work on time. There's no problem at all, man. If we change shift at 7 o'clock, their stuff is on the rig, ready to go. If we have to take a fire at 7:01, I don't have to look around the firehouse to see where they are. Okay. Now, I prefer people to get there early, but I can't make them get there early. And that's something else I talk to officers about setting expectations. If you put something in writing, make sure you can die on the hill. Hey, this company gets here an hour before shift change. You can't tell people that. Now, what you do is you build the climate and the culture that people want to do that, but you can't order. So what am I looking for? I'm looking for that disciplined person, man. I don't have to worry about them, man. They're ready to go. Okay. They never, they're not the ones who are walking around with their radio chirping because their battery's low. Okay. They're not the ones walking around with their pass alarm chirping because the battery's low. They take care of their stuff. They're the type of people who ride in the nozzle seat and say, hey, boss, let's pull the load. Okay? Why? I don't like the way it looks. I'm responsible for it. Let's just pull it off the rig so we can re-rack it. So these are people that are taking their position seriously. These are people who are investing time to make themselves better. These are the people that, they're doing PT. I don't, okay, it's PT time. They're investing in themselves. Okay. They're the ones who are reading. They're the ones who are listening to podcasts. I want people to come to me and say, hey, boss, I saw this thing on YouTube that I think may work out for us. Let's take a look at it. Okay. These are the things that people do for me that really earn their seat at the kitchen table. And then when we make a run, they know their job. They get their job done. I was listening to a pararescue guy, talk about being the new guy out of the pararescue team. Hey, the expectation is I'm going to do everything right the first time. That's the standard. Okay, if you're doing everything right the first time, you earned your seat. That's simple. Now, are we going to make mistakes? Yeah, absolutely. Are we? If you want to earn your seat, you're the type of person that'll come into my office, like I was talking about, 20 minutes ago, and say, "Hey, I struggle with the 24-foot ladder, boss. I need help with that." No problem. They just earn their seat. Now, if I got to figure out that they suck with the 24-foot ladder because when we had to throw it on the fire ground, they screwed it up, that's a problem. That's a problem. And every firefighter should know that they should be able to manage a 24-foot ladder. So these are the type of things that I look for, to earn your seat at the table. They're proud of who they are. They're proud of being here. They're proud. When I was a captain at Rescue 13 on the Sea Platoon, earn the seat at the table. That means you're proud to be here. I go work in this shitty firehouse. Man, you got to work in this shitty firehouse. Turn your papers in. Guess what? There's 5 others in the city. Go somewhere else. There's people who want to come to this firehouse. Those are the type of people that earn their seats at the table. And the boss has got to model all these behaviors back. That's the biggest thing, with being a boss, man. As Norman Vincent Peale once said, that there's nothing more confusing than a man who gives good advice and sets a bad example. So whatever we want to do, whatever we expect our people to do, we got to model that right back for them. But when we do all those things, we draw the good people in. And the other thing too is, especially in Illinois, because you have a heavy union influence in your state.
Yeah.
And a lot of times assignments are in the bid system, right? The senior guy gets the bid where he wants to go.
Yeah.
Well, if you don't want to deal with the mutts, do everything that I talked about. Because you know what? The mutts don't want to go there. The mutts want to go someplace where it's a free-for-all, where they're not held accountable, where they can sleep all day in the recliner. So when we set ourselves up like this and we talk about those values and we talk about our default position, we talk about training and what we expect people to be able to do in training, we tell people we want you to earn your seat here. Man, it's a magnet that brings good people in and it keeps the mutts away. And I think that's one of the tools you can use to build that culture in your firehouse that's going to give you a solid foundation. And I think that's what you do to earn your seat. And if you're not willing to do that, then you didn't earn your seat, man. It's like, bro, you know,
Yeah,
it's kind of it goes, man.
yeah. Um, we I skipped over one of the intro questions because I kind of liked what we were already talking about, but I did want to come back to it. So, obviously, firefighter culture and Chief Thompson would talk of the macro and micro and all those
Yeah.
different forms of culture. Talking more about the macro culture, I would say. Where did you pick that up along your journey here through the fire service? How did you come? Because obviously you understand those things and you're
Yeah.
aligned with those. So where did you pick that up?
I think the influence that really started to drive me down that road was my time in Cherry Hill. And I say that because when we merged, Roger Allshafer was the chief and commissioner in Philadelphia. And he retired and he moved into Cherry Hill because his daughter was living there at the time. So they recruited him to be our first fire chief. And he's actually the man that promoted me to battalion chief. And hey, you're not the commissioner in Philadelphia if you don't understand these things. So he went from Philadelphia to Cherry Hill, and he was my chief. So, and everybody that came up under him was really mentored by him. So that's where I really started to kind of wrap my arms around this. And it was like an incubator. Cherry Hill was like an incubator, man. We just made we joked around when we started doing our I was put in charge of our recruit academy, and we actually started doing our own recruit academy, and we nicknamed it the Fireman Factory. You want to learn how to be a fireman? Come to Cherry Hill. We'll teach you. And that's just one of many things that we said. Nowadays you probably have to say firefighter, but this is a long time ago.
Yeah.
That's a conversation for whatever. But that's where it all started. And then when I went to Missouri and I was the fire chief, and I was brought in to be a change agent, it's like, okay, well, I got to change a lot of things. And I started, thinking about, okay, what do we need to change here? And it just came to me that a lot of it was the underlying cultural issues in that fire department. We were struggling because nobody really paid attention to that. And I would say between my experience in Cherry Hill and the close to 8 years I spent in Sunrise Beach, Missouri, really kind of cemented that for me. That's where I really learned that. And I will never take credit for this because I was just part of a team that made these things happen. But these are two very successful organizations now, and I'm just blessed that I was afforded the opportunity to be part of that team. And I started having conversations like this with my subordinate officers, and they looked at me and they said, "Well, maybe he is a little more than just a tall guy." And they bought into what I said, and they said, "Okay, well, okay, boss, we'll get it," and they would take pieces of the pie and they would go ahead and make it happen. And it was like, man, there you go. So I think those two experiences are what really kind of shaped me, to get me to the point where I am now. And I'm very cautious about, what I say about myself, but I will say that I can probably sit down and have these conversations with the best of them, because I get it. I've been down that road. I see what it is. I see the bad. I see the good. And, I know where the middle is where you can pull people
Yeah.
to. Yep.
Awesome. Yeah.
Yep.
So, shifting gears again, and we're going to kind of come into the closing questions here. That doesn't mean that this is like we're done, because there's a lot of really I'm excited to hear some of these things. But
Yeah.
this is usually when I also say, for those of you that are still live, if you have questions for Chief Reilly, please go ahead and put them in the chat. Love to ask him whatever you guys are interested in, and we can work those in, obviously. But we're going to load up kind of the first one, and I really love asking this question. And it's, what's one mistake that you've made over the course of your career and you learned from?
Uh, I would say that when I came in, I was in too much of a hurry to promote. And, and sometimes when the opportunity is presented, you got to take advantage of it. But I think that I was in too much of a hurry, And when I first made captain, I really struggled because I did not have the experience and I didn't have the maturity in that position to allow me to be successful. And man, I had some great firefighters that worked with me. And I, to this day, man, I love this dude. I mean, thank God he worked for me because we had a call and I made a mess of it. And he pulled me over to the side and said, "Hey, Cap, that was a shitty scene, man, and that one's on you. You got to if you're going to lead us, you got to pull your head out of your ass and you got to start being our leader." And that really kind of put the light bulb on because I'd promoted up too quick. I thought I knew everything. I was a young guy. I came out of the Army in the 70s, so, I mean, we all had chips on our shoulder. And I just promoted too fast at that time. Thank God I had those people around me that gave me that real reality check and allowed me to reset. And I think from that point on, I really started to kind of mature into a leadership role. But yeah, I mean, that's it. That's the one.
Yeah, all right. I also like you said the word maturity, and I think that comes up a lot with a lot of these other themes that we've talked about, right? Whether it's your health, whether it's your discipline over training, like there's a maturity that comes with that, realizing like what we're really here to do.
Yep.
And once you kind of get, I guess, humbled by that, and then you grow up and you realize that you need to make effective changes. So, yeah, thank you for sharing that.
I mean, I can remember that like it happened yesterday. It was a motor vehicle accident, car into a pole with a person trapped on Springdale Road, in front of the Catholic Church, and the car was going toward Route 70. I mean, I forget what color the car was, but I remember everything else.
Yeah,
so, yeah, and it stuck with me, and it was a real learning experience.
Yeah. So. This question, I don't know if I think you said you listened to maybe a couple other episodes or maybe a little bit of some of them, but I really liked being able to give you an opportunity to tell people maybe that you haven't gotten an opportunity to say thank you for influencing you early in your career. I think it's important. Sometimes we miss that opportunity to let people know the influence they had. So who was somebody early in your career that really influenced you and it's still lingering effects today?
Well, I mean, I got to put the name out there of the firefighter who pulled me over in the corner and, and lit into my ass. His name was Montreal Haldeman. And I mean, and he really, he fired me up for, really messing that call up. And it was like, ooh, I mean, that was a big wake up call. And then Bob Giorgio was my chief in Cherry Hill. And he just gave me so many different opportunities. I mean, he was the assistant chief. And, we were, going through a big expansion. I said, Bob, we really need to have some type of recruit academy. We just can't hire certified people and give them an orientation, man. We got to build the foundation for the future of this organization. And the only way we can do it is have some type of recruit academy, regimented, discipline, everything. And he goes, okay, man, make it happen. And he just turned the project over to me. And he said, whatever you need, you let me know. But this is your project. You run with it. And he told all the other chiefs, he told everybody in the fire department, look, Reilly's in charge of this. And when I retired, they actually brought me back as an independent contractor to run one of the academies. So those two people in Cherry Hill really, really did a lot, man. They really did a lot for me. And they really positioned me to end up where I am. And then I've just had so many great people around me working for me. I mean, I had some, really stellar people working for me in Missouri. I've got some close friends that I still stay in contact out in California. There were some people in Kansas. So, yeah. But those two guys, I mean, if I'm going to put some names out there, man, I'll put those names out there. Yeah, absolutely.
That's awesome. Yeah. And yeah, like you said, there's always plenty of people on the way, and it's not devaluing, but there are definitely a couple that really just, they stand out and you'll never forget them. Even as you go to other things, you'll never forget them.
Yep. We still talk. I still talk to both of those guys on a regular basis, man. They've really become, part of my life, and, they know my family, they know my kids. And And I will say to everybody, that's one of the things about this job that the job gives us that you don't get working at Walmart or driving a trash truck or working for the highway department, man. It's just so, the impact some of the people you're going to serve with that will have, on your life it's just phenomenal, man. It's a great ride, man. Enjoy it.
Yeah.
Enjoy it.
Oh,
It's good stuff.
absolutely. Uh, have you ever? I hate this. This always ends up sounding really negative, but
Yeah.
people struggle with this. So that's why I ask. Have you ever lost your passion for the fire service? And then, if you did, how'd you get it back, and what did you do to maintain it?
Yeah. Yeah, I did. I mean, I got into at one point in Cherry Hill, man. I was in just, a bad place, great organizations live, leadership lives in ebb and flow. You're really good, really good, really good, and then all of a sudden, it's down. So I was at that down point, and I was actually going to go to the ATF. I mean, I had made some contacts, I had reached out, and I had a couple ATF agents that, you know, through a network I got close with, and they said, "Hey, listen, bro. Here's the thing about the ATF. If you tell them you want to do the fire side, man, they love that, because at the time in the ATF, everybody wanted to chase the guns." So I said, "Okay, no problem." So I started studying for the test and whatever. Clinton was the president, and they froze hiring, and they did not open the test again until after I had turned 38. So I was too old. So I was at that point where it's like, well, damn, what am I going to do now? And the only other thing I know how to do was be a fireman. And just about that time, I made battalion chief. And then, between losing the option to go to the ATF and then having the opportunity to be a battalion chief, it just said, okay, man, you know, this is where I'm going to make my stand. My kids are still in school, man. I can't really afford to move around, man. I don't want to, jerk my kids out of school. This is it, man. I'm going to stay here in Cherry Hill and do the best I can. And man, once things started happening as a battalion chief for me, started to get, I started to grow in that position, started to get some experience. We had some transfers. I had some really great people come to my command, and that's what you know put my passion back into me. And from that point forward, whenever I felt a little bit low, I fought back to the ATF days. And it's like, bro, you've been here before and you wrote it out and things got better. But you were there before because of the cycle of life, and that's where you are right now. So you know what? Put Take 72 off, go to the beach, come back, everything will be fine. And then from that point forward, that's what I did. And once I got over that hump, I don't think I ever lost my passion for the fire service.
It's awesome.
Yep.
If you citizen, new guy, whatever it might be, someone that has no idea about the fire service, and you want to put them with one person who's going to show them what the fire service is all about, and you're going to trust that person to explain it all and set them up for success, who would you put them with, and alive or dead?
Well, I don't, in a way, I don't want to say this because I'm going to come off like a real jackass, but I'd put them with me.
Hey, whatever, yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
I'd put them with, well, you heard me talk for 2 hours. What do you think?
Yeah, right? Like,
I'd put them with me.
yeah.
Hey, what do you want to know, man? What do you want to know?
Yeah.
Hey, jump in my car, man. Let's go ride. Let's go out to a firehouse, man. Let's go drive by a burned down building. Let me tell you what happened here. Let me tell you about the night that we had the 3 tractor trailers and the 6 cars all piled up on 295 in a cattle chute construction zone with one of the tractor trailers on fire and somebody in it. Let me tell you about that.
Yeah.
Because that happened to me. Yeah. Put it with me.
That ain't an ego thing. I totally get what you're saying. I totally get it. Like you're excited about it. Like of course you want them with you. Yeah, yeah. That doesn't make you a jerk or anything like that. I love the answer. Yeah.
Yeah.
Then Man, I guess the last question. And I'm bummed that it's the last question, but like,
I bet you Corley would give me max points.
he would give you max points for that.
Okay.
I don't know if he's got that trademarked, and now I'm going to owe him 15 cents, but still, he probably would give that max points, right? Last one here is what's the best part of the job?
Well, certainly I think being able to serve the community. You know, I was a rescue squad officer with Jersey Task Force, so I spent 12 days at Ground Zero from September 11th. So I mean, I was given the opportunity, and not only the opportunity to serve the country, but I've been in situation after situation after situation where bad things have befallen my community, and the community has trusted me to go out there and restore a sense of security. So that's just something that I take a tremendous amount of pride in. And I say this, I've spent my entire adult life in this profession, working every day. I mean, even today, now that I'm not on active duty, but I still do a lot of training. I'm working every day to get a little bit better. And what I say is, I don't want to see anything bad happen. I don't want to see anybody's house burned down. I don't want to see anybody hurt, injured in a car accident or whatever. But I have prepared my entire life to be one of the people who can get into that situation and help make it right. So if it's going to happen, I want to be there. Not ego, not whatever. It's just I want to serve. I want to serve the community, and I want to serve the people that I serve. So that's a great thing. And the other thing, about the fire service that I think is so great is, I walk in the shadow. John Norman's book, Working with Giants.
Mm-hmm.
I walk in the shadow of just phenomenal people, man. I know people who have been killed in the line of duty. I know people who know people. I mean, I know the inside story on some of these incidents that have happened. It's just phenomenal people, and I'm in that company. And at the end of the day, like when I introduce myself, I'm a firefighter. Well, so are all these other fantastic people, and I get to be part of that, and I just hope that I earn the right to call myself a firefighter. And these things that I just talked about are the things, if you talk about, what keeps me from losing my passion, when I think about these things, they're the ones that make me want to get up, man. Let's get after it, man. Well, let's go earn the seat at the table. And it's just such a phenomenal thing that we're part of. And it's very true. I mean, when you're part of something, you don't always see it from that perspective, especially now that I'm retired and I really see that 30,000-foot view, man. There's nothing better, man. There really isn't, And I guess that's why, I just love what I do, and I love the positions that I'm in. So
Yeah. Can't ask for more than that. Yeah.
Yep.
Well, shit, Chief. I guess that's a wrap. But
okay.
You can't end on. I mean, something better than just saying how amazing the job is and being able to do what we do.
Yeah.
That's.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's just that simple, man. I think so. Yep.
So
cool.
Well, I really appreciate you coming on, and this was a really fun conversation, and everything that you shared just top notch and awesome. So, as you were kind of talking about before, how can people get a hold of you if they wanted to, reach out and get in contact with you?
Yeah, absolutely. So, CHFD Harley is what I use on social media for my own private account. So, if you want to see pictures of the beach or my grandkids or whatever, you can go there. Instagram, Facebook. My business is First Line Fire Service Training LLC, and that's a Facebook page. My business Instagram is First Line 850, which I'm in the 850 now. That's what we call ourselves.
Yeah.
Down here on the Panhandle. And then you can always use CHFD Harley at Gmail. Excuse me. You can send me an email. Anybody have any questions or whatever, man? Feel free to reach out. My purpose now is just to be able to share my experiences, to help the next generation, help the people who are riding the rigs and making the runs now, be able to do their job a little bit better. So if there's anything that I can do, feel free to reach out. If there's any other podcast, folks out there, man, I love jumping on podcasts. And, a shameless plug for my company, man. I travel. I can send you course descriptions or whatever. Like I say, I like working directly for fire departments, and I do a lot of seminar stuff. So if people like what they've heard over the last 2 hours and they want a little more of it, reach out. We'll see what we can do.
There you go. Absolutely, they totally should. Well, Chief, thank you again. You can green room with me as we close. I always forget to tell people before, because otherwise it's awkward. I'm like, all right, bye, and then we both hang up. And
Yeah.
So,
Nope.
Those of you that have been watching, or if you are listening later when this gets uploaded at some point, thank you, and we'll catch you on the next one. Like I said, this is the last one for me in October, and then I'll post whatever my next guest is going to be. So, take care. Have a nice night, Chief. Once again, thank you.
Excellent.